I woke up to that Salem kind of rain, the misty, stubborn kind that makes the street look like it's breathing. I filled Victor's old steel thermos and let the lid click shut the way he used to, just to hear it. Small rituals keep the house from feeling too large. The porch boards were damp and honest, and the mailbox held a single fat envelope with a red stamped label that made my stomach tighten. Certified, signature required, from Cole and Partners Realty. I stood there with the thermos against my chest, like it could warm more than my hands. The return address blurred a little because I hadn't had coffee yet, or maybe because my eyes watered without permission sometimes. I brought it inside and set it beside my stack of blue index cards on the kitchen counter, the ones I started after Victor died. Each card has a line he would have said if he was still here. On the top card I'd written in thick black marker, "Don't sign when rushed." I hadn't even slit the envelope when tires whispered over wet gravel. Tara's Prius. Evan's laugh arrived half a second before he did. He doesn't knock. He performs an arrival. "Mom, you're up," Tara said, already halfway to a hug that landed like a polite tap. She looked pretty in that cardigan I gave her last Christmas, hair tucked into a tidy clip, the soft kind of tired that mothered me before she meant to. Behind her, Evan shook rain off a jacket expensive enough to have a name. He wore that smile he saves for servers and closers and women he wants a shortcut from. "We brought you something," he announced, lifting a leather folio like a magician about to pull out a rabbit. "It's just a safety screening. For the place I told you about? Cedar Hills. They're holding a unit with a ground floor patio. Perfect for your tomatoes." "My tomatoes do just fine right here," I said, and it sounded softer than I felt. "Mom," Tara murmured, "just look at it. It's not a commitment. They need a signature to reserve, like a wait list." "Next word." He slid the papers onto my table and uncapped a pen that looked heavier than any pen has a right to be. His thumb brushed the clip such a small, practiced gesture, and he aimed the tip at a highlighted line like he was helping me cross a street. I looked down and saw more than a screening form. There was language about representatives and facilitation and funny durable powers. The words had that slippery feel, like a floor with a fresh coat of wax. "Who asked for this?" I said. "Standard," Evan said. He flashed teeth. "You're not obligated to move. But if we don't handle this week, they'll give the patio to someone else. Inventory is tight." He smelled like gym soap and hurry. Tara hovered behind him, eyes flicking between my face and the form. I thought of the October sun last year, when she said she couldn't stay for lunch because Evan had a client, how I packed leftovers into a glass container and wrote her name on blue painter's tape so she'd see it later and feel loved. I thought of that tape when I looked at the highlighted line. "You can read it, obviously," Evan said, pretending patience. "Or we can just sign the screening so we don't lose the slot. We don't want to miss out because of paperwork." "I like paperwork," I said. "Paperwork keeps meanings honest." He laughed like I'd told a rural joke in the city. "Totally, but we don't need to overcomplicate this." I reached for the thermos and took a sip. The tea tasted like upright spine. "Is this why you're here at 8 in the morning?" "We're just being proactive," Tara said quickly. She touched my wrist. "Cedar Hills has a shuttle and a nurse on duty. You keep saying the porch step is uneven. This would make everything easier." "Easier for whom?" I asked, then softened because I saw her flinch. "I mean, thank you for thinking of me. Let me read." Evan slid the pen closer. That pen kept inching like a tide. "We really do need to get this in before close of business. They've had a lot of interest in units with patios. If we don't put a reservation on it, well, I will not be rushed," I said. I was surprised at how steady my voice was. I flipped my top index card and set it face up beside the stack so he could read it. "Don't sign when rushed. I'll make tea. We can all breathe." He smiled in a way that meant he would not breathe, but he did shrug, and Tara said, "Thanks, Mom." And I poured 3 mugs and set them down without coasters because it's my table and I have earned the right to wipe rings later. While their cups steamed, I opened the mailbox envelope instead the certified one. My name was printed wrong, missing the accent I don't use but still recognize. Inside, a cover letter, a list of required authorizations, a cheerful brochure printed on thick stock with photos of a patio that could belong to any grandmother and therefore to none. "See?" Evan said. "It's the packet they send everyone. All we're doing is reserving your options. I mean, we don't want to get boxed out because someone else moves faster, right? Deal's close, Nora." He always says my name like a handle. I took another sip of tea. "I will read," I said again, "and I'll have someone I trust read." "Who?" he asked, quick, like a hand over a flame. "Me," I said, and then, before he could make another circle with his pen, I added, "And Leah, from the library. She's good with forms." Evan's smile blinked. Just a flicker, like a light considering a storm. "We don't have time to bring more people into this," he said. "If we don't submit by Friday, that patio is gone. The deal closes." "What deal?" I asked, and felt the thermos warm the place under my ribs where fear had been sitting. "Whose deal closes this week, Evan?" After they left, the house exhaled. You know that feeling the quiet is almost physical, like a folded blanket over your shoulders, except today it felt a little heavy. I rinsed the 3 mugs, lined them on the rack like soldiers, and took Victor's old ledger down from the pantry shelf. It still smells faintly of pencil shavings and the wintergreen he used to chew when we did bills together. We called it Thursday Night Truth, even when Thursday slid into Friday, and the only truth was that numbers don't care about your feelings. Mortgage due. Utilities logged. Notes clipped with paper clips so old they've learned to behave. Victor had this rule he wrote on the first page in block letters. If you're being hurried, someone else benefits. I copied it onto one of my blue index cards in sharper ink. Then I made a second card and wrote the bones I've been trying to live by, the 3 lines that make my hands steadier. Document, policy, enforce. I taped that one to the fridge door, right above the dent where the avocado fell last summer. It felt ceremonial in a small way, like putting my name back on my own mail. Grief is a slow math. After the funeral, Tara came by less, not out of spite at first, just velocity. New projects at her office, a Pilates membership, a husband with an appetite for opportunities. She started sentences with, "Evan thinks," and I tried to be the kind of mother who hears the love behind the plan. He was suddenly very helpful about streamlining my life. Autopay, paperless, consolidate accounts, stop cluttering with folders. He called my folders museum exhibits, like they were quaint little fossils. I tried his way for 3 weeks, hated it. The first time a statement went somewhere digital and I couldn't lay my fingers on it, I felt like I'd misplaced my keys and my voice at the same time. So I made tea, took out the ledger, and made a quiet decision. I can say no without making a speech. I put 2 new cards in the stack, email only for anything important, and no in-home visits without written consent. It sounds stiff, I know, but rules are just kindness written down so you can point to them when your throat closes. That afternoon I walked to the library, because sometimes the cure for feeling small is being around other people's books. That's where Leah lives most days, on the other side of a desk with a mug that says, "Ask me anything," and a hair clip that looks like a fountain pen. I've watched her help a teenager fill out a FAFSA and a veteran find his discharge papers with the same level gaze. When I told her about the screening form, she didn't wince. She doesn't do drama. She slid a notepad toward me and said, "Let's set your defaults." We made a template together for subject lines so no one could pretend to misunderstand later. Follow-up re. Documents presented on date at location. We wrote a standard paragraph I could paste. For my records, I will review any documents independently and respond in writing. Please do not schedule visits to my home without prior written consent. She showed me how to BCC myself to a separate archive so there would always be a twin copy living somewhere Evan couldn't tidy. It was like getting fitted for armor that looks like a cardigan. Leah also taught me the trick of the confirm and correct email, the one you send right after a conversation. Today at 10:15 a.m., you stated X and Y. My understanding is Z. She says it turns fog into paper. We laughed when she said it, but I went home and created a folder in my email called Fog just to make the joke true. On the walk back, Salem did that thing where the sky changes its mind 3 times in a block. The air smelled like bark. I thought about how Victor and I used to stretch $1 in a joke to fill a whole evening. The house looked smaller from the sidewalk, kinder. I taped 1 more card over the light switch by the door so I'd see it each night. Silence isn't a signature. I said it out loud, to hear if it sounded like me. It did. The next morning, I practiced saying no in ways that weren't a slap. I called the credit union to make sure my accounts had a verbal password again. The woman on the line, Trina, cheerful in a way that didn't bruise, made me repeat the phrase twice, and each time I felt a click inside, like a drawer finding its rail. I closed 3 old store cards I kept for the 10% coupons and threw away the catalogs. I sorted my blue cards into a cheap recipe box and labeled the dividers like a person who expects to need them more than once: banking, house, health, family, other. And then, because the universe has a comedian on staff, my phone buzzed with a text from Evan. It ended with a smiley face that didn't feel friendly. "Heads up, appraisers coming by Saturday morning to get eyes on the place, just routine. I'll be there to help, no need to fuss." I stared at the screen until the words cooled. I hadn't requested an appraisal. I hadn't granted access. Somewhere between his helpfulness and my quiet, a door had been propped open that I didn't see. I set the phone beside the index cards and ran my palm over the stack like you might smooth the nap of velvet. Who invited an appraiser into my house? Saturday came with that performative sunshine Salem does after a week of drizzle, like the sky wants credit for trying. I'd already set my boundaries in ink, but I still caught myself wiping the kitchen counters twice and straightening a stack of mail that had nowhere better to be. Victor's steel thermos sat on the table like a witness. I'd written the date and time on a blue index card and clipped a pen to it. If they were going to treat my home like a transaction, I could treat the moment like a record. They were 10 minutes early. Of course they were. Evan called out, "Good morning," in a voice tuned for open houses, and Tara followed with an apologetic smile that made me want to hand her a sweater. Behind them came a man in a gray jacket carrying a laser measurer and a folder patched with Post-it flags. He tracked drywall lines with the squint of someone who sees walls as margins. The fourth person, a young woman with a sleek ponytail and a tote stamped with a brokerage logo, introduced herself as paralegal support. The title slid around in my ear. Her badge said, "Client Services." Omatic. "Just routine," Evan said, already halfway into the living room. "We'll be in and out. Won't take much of your morning, Nora." "I didn't schedule this," I said, keeping my voice even, "and I don't allow visits without written consent." He turned the evenness into something to charm. "We texted you, remember? Totally informal. This is just to get eyes on the property so we're not flying blind when we make decisions." Market's moving. The appraiser, if that's what he was, knelt to measure the baseboard and frowned like the wood had disappointed him on purpose. "Older tile in the kitchen," he mumbled. "Roof looks aged." "The tile was Victor's winter project," I said. "It's not trying to be anything it isn't." Tara touched the back of a dining chair, then took her hand away like the chair might bruise. "Mom, it's just an assessment. No one's making choices today." "Exactly," Evan said, grateful for the assist. He opened my back door without asking and stepped onto the porch. "We'll note the slope someone could trip. Liability is a thing." I wrote, 10:07 a.m. Evan comments, "Liability. Open door uninvited. Appraiser measuring kitchen called tile older. Client services woman taking photos with her phone." The woman noticed me noticing. "We like to create a visual record for the file," she said, pleasantly. "Do you have any pets we should secure?" "In one's to the calm." "I record too," I said, lifting the index card a little. "Different medium." Evan reappeared with momentum. "Okay, let's make sure we don't lose a week to logistics. I've got a standard authorizations form that will let me act as your representative, so small things like scheduling, document pickups don't require you to chase signatures. It's temporary, totally revocable, saves everyone time." He laid a stapled packet on my table and clicked his thick pen. I could feel Tara's breath from where she stood, the way you feel a draft from a door you didn't mean to leave open. "Evan," I said, "we've already discussed email only and written consent. I don't appoint representatives." "It's a gauntlet." "This isn't appointing," he said smoothly. "It's facilitating, like putting a name on the line so the machine knows who to call. You can revoke anytime. It keeps momentum. We don't want to miss this window." The appraiser held his phone up for a panorama. Pantry's small. "It's the size that fits a person who cooks for one," I said. I wrote, 10:14, panorama in kitchen. Comment, pantry small. Client services, snapping the porch. Evan pushing representative language. He slid the packet closer, and I flipped the top page without touching the pen. The words had that practiced blur that makes ordinary people nod. Agency, authorization, limited. I looked for an end date and didn't see one. I looked for my lawyer's name and saw a blank line waiting to be forgotten. "Who is your counsel, Nora?" The woman asked lightly, like we were discussing hairdressers. "We can loop them in if that makes it feel better." "I'll loop in who I need," I said. "Do you have business cards?" "I'd like names spelled correctly for my notes." She blinked, recovered, and handed me a glossy rectangle. The appraiser did not. "Mom," Tara said softly, "we just want options." "I want options too," I said. "I want to choose them." Evan's charm thinned. "Can we not make this adversarial? We're all on the same side. If we could just initial here and here, we stay ahead. If we don't, we'll be behind." "Satin, behind what?" I asked. He glanced at the woman. She looked at the appraiser. The appraiser looked at my ceiling like it might answer. "I'm going to send a quick follow-up email," I said, picking up my phone, "to confirm what was presented and what I declined. That way we're all aligned." I typed, "Today at 10:07 a.m. Evan Cole arrived with names. They presented representative authorization and initiated an appraisal without prior written consent. I do not authorize representation or any scheduling without written approval. Please confirm receipt." Leah taught me to hit BCC before send. I hit it. The tiny whoosh felt like a hand at my back. Evan tried one more smile. Totally paper trail is great. While we're being thorough, I'll just get the preliminary paperwork over to escrow so when you do give the nod, we're not starting from scratch." The word snagged like a hook on wool. The client services woman chimed in, too bright. "Oh, you're fine. Escrow on our end is already open." By Monday, my inbox had grown a new kind of email, the kind with polite, bold headings and cheerful bullets that carry something heavy underneath. Subject line, "Preliminary title report for your records." For my records, as if the words themselves were doing me a favor. I brewed tea, set Victor's dented thermos on the table like a paperweight for my nerves, and opened the PDF. It read like a weather report in a language I almost knew. Legal description, exceptions, matters that may affect title. I took a breath, pulled the blue index cards toward me, and wrote on a fresh one, "If I'm confused, slow down." Then I read the part labeled Potential UCC Filing Draft. I said it out loud just to make it less slippery. A uniform commercial code notice against what? Exactly. Household goods? Fixtures? The idea of someone touching my stove with a form made my skin feel inside out. Farther down, there it was. Unrecorded quitclaim Sunfield Ridge LLC. Pending. The name rang like a doorbell I couldn't place. Sunfield Ridge. The words were suburban and sunny and wrong in my mouth. I kept reading the way you keep staring at a stain, hoping it will tell you what it used to be. When the meaning finally landed, it did so with the precision of shame. Sunfield Ridge was the name of the apartment complex Tara and Evan lived in back when they first married. We'd helped them paint. We'd laughed about the grand name for beige buildings. I could still see the cardboard pizza box on their carpet and the way Tara had wiped grease from her fingers with a receipt. I forwarded the email to myself and to Leah with the subject line we'd drafted at the library, follow-up documents presented on date. Then I called her. "Bring everything," she said. "Pens, cards. We'll translate it together." At the library table, Leah dotted the margins of the report with small, tidy notes in pencil. "See this?" she whispered, tapping the UCC line. "This is a heads-up of intention. Not final, but it's a flag. And here, unrecorded quitclaim, that's a draft of a transfer deed, not filed yet. Pending means someone's pushing a boulder up a hill, hoping you won't notice until it's over the crest." "Sunfield Ridge," I said. Her eyebrow moved a millimeter. "Familiar?" "Absoluter. Tara and Evan lived there." Leah didn't say anything dramatic. She drew a rectangle around the name and wrote, "Related party?" in the gentlest script I've ever seen. Then she slid over a clean index card. "New rule for your fridge," she said. "Ask for credentials. photograph badges. I smiled despite myself and wrote it down, printing each word like it could hold up a wall. Ask for credentials, photograph badges. It felt like putting a latch on a gate that had been swinging in the wind. My phone buzzed on the table. Evan. Heads up, court-appointed visitor, CAV, may reach out standard procedure when there's concern about capacity. Just cooperate and we'll keep things moving. Anyone else distracted? I read it twice, then handed it to Leah like it might burn me. There it is, she said softly. The word they use when they want to make your no sound like confusion. Something in me straightened. Not like a threat, more like a spine remembering its job. I wrote back, happy to meet. Please give them my direct line. I prefer all appointments confirmed in writing. I BCC'd the fog folder and felt the small relief of putting a footprint where I'd already walked. I walked home along the path that curls behind the post office, the one with blackberry brambles that grab your sleeve if you drift. The air smelled like wet rubber and cedar. I was rehearsing answers in my head for a person I hadn't met. Yes, I know the date. Yes, I cook. Yes, I pay the trash bill on time when Tara called. Evan mentioned someone from the court might stop by, she said. Quick, like a nurse narrating a shot. Don't be upset. It's just to make sure you're safe. I'll put on a kettle, I said. They can see exactly how safe I am. Her breath faltered. Mom, please don't be stubborn. If you just sign the authorization, we can make this simple. Simple for whom? I asked, softer this time because I could hear the plea under her pitch. If a visitor comes, I'll be glad to meet them. I'll ask for their badge. I'll show them my cards. Everyone. There was a pause where I could hear the shape of her mouth. Your cards, she said, trying to make it a smile. My rules, I said. After we hung up, the house felt like it was holding its breath. I went to the hall closet, the one with the shelf that always sticks, and pulled down the old banker's box Victor used to call the Ark. It looked like any moving box until I touched the side where his handwriting had faded. Ray's docs. The lid came up an inch and stopped. Something in the corner glinted. At the bottom seam, trapped where the cardboard had bowed, was a small tin hasp with a rusted lock the size of a thumbnail. Not the box's lock, this was different. A separate little thing with a feeling of privacy. I freed it carefully and turned it in my fingers. It was sticky with time. On the pantry shelf where we keep the tea, a chipped saucer held the tiniest of keys. I'd been dusting around it for months without thinking. I don't know why I thought to try, except grief teaches you to try anyway. I sat at the kitchen table, set the lock in my palm, and found the thermos heavy and steady under my other hand. Ask for credentials, photograph badges. Check the old places before you believe the new ones. The key slid into the lock with a resistance that felt almost polite, then turned with a soft click I felt in my teeth. The lock opened like a held breath, and inside the banker's box under birth certificates and a rubber-banded stack of taxes from a year when gas was cheaper was a flat manila folder with Victor's handwriting on the tab. He had that neat printing style a shop teacher would envy. It just said, House Backup. I laid it on the table, set the thermos beside it like a paperweight, and told myself there was no rush. The first page was a letterhead I didn't recognize at first. Furco Property Services, not a bank, not a law firm, a management company, the kind of outfit that wears khakis to meetings. The statement listed, Beneficial Interest Class B with Victor's name next to numbers that didn't look like our marriage ever looked. Small deposits, regular as breathing, over years, like he'd been tucking acorns into a place only he could find later. My chest did that tight, warm thing that happens when grief meets competence. Behind it was a stack with paper clips so tidy I could feel his hands. A promissory note plain as bread between Sunfield Ridge LLC and a private trust I'd never heard of, VR Family Trust. Victor had been the note holder, the person you pay when you want to keep your lights on and your investors happy. The terms were clipped and careful, interest on the first, covenants about transfers, a clause so calm it read like something you'd tell a child. Any attempt to coerce or unduly pressure the primary beneficiary to vacate her residence constitutes a default. I read it twice. Then I said the words out loud to the toaster, because I needed something to hear me. Victor, what did you build here? There was more. A single page with the most Victor sentence on it. If someone is rushing you, darling, don't sign. Call Leah. Her name in his hand looked like it had been living in that envelope, waiting to walk out. I laughed and cried at the same time, which is a human noise that startles crows, by the way. I pressed the letter to my face for a second, and it smelled faintly like the cedar drawer we kept Christmas cards in. It hit me in pieces. Victor had known the texture of our future better than I did, not because he thought I was weak, but because he trusted my kindness to get in the way of my no. He set up a lever where I could never have reached one, a note tied to the place with the sunny name, a relationship with a firm I'd never have the patience to call, a line that said, essentially, if they try to move you like furniture, I get to stop the truck. It wasn't a surprise party. It was a firebreak. I pulled a blue index card and wrote in block letters big enough for a stranger to read through the window. Silence isn't a signature. I slid Victor's letter under the magnet on the fridge where the grocery list lives, and for once I didn't care how it looked. Then I made a second card, because Leah would be proud. Furco, contact verify independently. I wrote the number from the statement and circled it, then wrote it again from the firm's official website on my phone, just to wield the habit of confirmation. I left a message with a real person's name and asked for a call back to verify beneficial interests and covenants related to Sunfield Ridge LLC. My voice didn't wobble. For a minute, I just sat and let the air move through the kitchen like I'd opened a window. The thermos leaned into a ring of light on the table. The tea inside had gone cool enough to taste like resolve. I pictured Evan's pen, always inching forward, and realized I didn't have to slap it out of his hand. I could simply move the paper he wanted to write on. I made copies. Not the digital kind, both kinds. Scans into a folder named exactly what it was, and paper copies into plastic sleeves like a third grader protecting a science fair project. I labeled the spine of a cheap binder, House Boundary File. The words looked ridiculous and perfect together. My phone lit up with Tara's name. I let it go to voicemail because the muscles I use for talking to my daughter needed a stretch and a glass of water. Then another text came in, Evan, of course. For your information, court-appointed visitor coming by Monday morning. Standard. Please be prepared to demonstrate daily living activities. We're trying to avoid escalations. I looked at Victor's letter, and then at my stack of cards. I typed slowly. The way you cut fabric you don't want to ruin. Thanks for the update. I'll be ready. Please ask them to bring official credentials. All appointments must be confirmed in writing. Areas 1, Weneddak. I put the phone face down, opened the binder, and slid the promissory note into the first sleeve. The plastic crackled like applause. Then I added the Furco statement and Victor's letter and wrote on my next blue card. Questions for Cav. Who scheduled you? What concerns were reported? May I record? Will you note that I choose email only for decisions? I tucked the card in the front pocket of the binder, so the questions would be the first thing I saw when the doorbell rang. I don't know if power is a feeling or a posture, but sitting there with Victor's handwriting and my own rules in the same stack, I recognized myself again. Not as the woman who has to be saved from a porch step, but as the person who knows where the step is and who built the handrail. Monday, I'd have company. I found a clean mug. I set the thermos beside it. And for the first time since this started, I wanted the doorbell to ring. Monday came with a square of sun on the kitchen floor, the kind of light that makes dust look like confetti if you let it. I set out 2 mugs and Victor's dented thermos as if hospitality could be armor. The new card on my fridge, ask for credentials, photograph badges. I caught the light too. When the doorbell rang, I felt steady enough to say my name like a password. He was younger than the title makes you imagine. Neat beard, careful shoes, a messenger bag that had seen sidewalks. Good morning, Miss Reyes. I'm Ari Mendoza, court-appointed visitor. He held the badge so I could read it without squinting. I took a photo because my card told me to, and because it made my hands remember I was the host here. His smile didn't flinch. Thank you. Would you like me to email you a copy of my appointment letter as well? Yes, I said, and stepped aside. Email only is how I keep my life tidy. He looked at the thermos, at the binder on the table labeled House Boundary File, then back at me with a kind curiosity I've only ever seen at libraries. We sat. I poured tea, He took his with honey and a seriousness that made me like him. "I have a standard set of questions," he began, pulling out a tablet. "Daily living, orientation, safety. This isn't an exam. If there's anything you want to add, we can do that." I nodded. "Before we start, I'll be recording an incident log for my files. Date, time, who's present, what's said. I'll also send a confirm and correct email after, just so there's no fog later." He smiled at the word fog in a way that said it wasn't the first time he'd met someone who labeled their chaos. "Sounds good." We went through the basics. "What day is it?" "Monday." "What did you eat for breakfast?" "Toast with peanut butter because it refuses to disappoint me." "Which medications do you take?" A short list I keep taped inside the pantry door, with refills on autopay because I live in the 21st century. We walked the house. He noticed the grab bar near the shower I'd installed last fall after a slip that scared only me. He noticed the rug tape on the hallway runner. He noticed my smoke detectors had fresh batteries because the chirp offends my soul. When we came back to the kitchen, he tapped his tablet and glanced at the binder again. "May I ask about your paperwork there?" "Of course," I said, and laid out the first sleeve like a magician doing a slow trick. "This is a statement from Furco Property Services noting my late husband's beneficial interest in a pool. This is a promissory note, Sunfield Ridge LLC as borrower, VR Family Trust as lender, and this is my husband's letter, which says if someone rushes me, I shouldn't sign, and I should call Leah." I called Leah. He read like a person raised around good teachers. "You've organized this well." "Victor taught me Thursday night truth," I said. "Numbers before feelings, paper before pressure." There was a knock on the doorframe and a voice pitched to sound casual. "Everything okay in here?" Evan, of course, with Tara half a step behind, apology tucked into her posture. I didn't stand. "We're in the middle of an appointment," I said. "I didn't invite visitors." Evan flashed his broker smile at Ari. "Hey, I'm Evan's son-in-law. Happy to be a resource. We've been concerned about some lapses. Thought I could provide context." "Thank you," Ari said, neutrality like a tuned instrument. "Today I'm meeting with Miss Reyes. If I need collateral information, I'll reach out separately." Evan didn't move. He put his hand on the back of a chair like he owned all furniture if he liked it enough. "We're just trying to avoid escalations. There's a Cedar Hills unit on a clock, and we don't want my mother-in-law to miss her window because she's overwhelmed by details. I've opened escrow so we aren't starting from frame." "Who opened escrow?" I asked, because the word scratched me even when someone else said it. "On what authority?" Evan's smile whitened. "Preliminary. Placeholder. Standard." Ari glanced at me, and then at the binder again. "For clarity," he said, voice gentle. "Miss Reyes, do you consent to your son-in-law acting on your behalf in property-related matters?" "I do not," I said. "I prefer email only. Written consent required for any scheduling, and I have not authorized representation." Ari made a small note. "Do you have independent counsel advising you?" "He's a stupender." He was nodded managround. "I have Leah," I said, which made him smile, and then, "And I verify numbers directly from official sources, not from links handed to me." Evan tried another angle. "Look, we're all on the same team. She says she likes paperwork, great. I brought a standard authorization so I can streamline small stuff. No one's trying to trap anyone." Ari's eyes softened in a way I recognized from another lifetime. "Miss Reyes, were you ever involved with the Roosevelt Branch Library's adult literacy program?" I blinked. "Yes. Thursday nights. I taught filing systems to whoever wandered in." "Why?" He set his pen down and looked exactly like a 16-year-old who had just remembered a kind thing. "You taught me the difference between piles and files," he said, laughing at himself. "You said a label is a promise to your future self. I was the kid who put everything in his backpack and then lost the backpack. The kitchen got warmer by 3 degrees, I swear." "Ari," I said, hearing his name in a younger key. "You were the one who brought me a broken stapler and asked if we could make it into a paperweight." He looked like he wanted to be embarrassed and grateful at the same time. "I won't pretend that doesn't make today complicated for my heart," he said, then turned back to professional like a click you could hear. "But my report will be based on what I see and what's documented." 8. Documented is my hobby now, I said. He nodded and asked me a series of questions I want the world to know are not demeaning when asked with respect. How do you get groceries? Who do you call if you fall? What's your backup if the power goes out? I answered with the kind of specific that makes people stop underestimating you. I pointed to the laminated card by the phone with Officer Torres's non-emergency number. I showed him the printed list of neighbors with keys, 2, both of whom know where the breaker is. I showed him the log I keep of who enters my house and why. He didn't need everything. I gave him enough. He took another sip of tea, then scrolled through something on his tablet. I've reviewed the packet your son-in-law provided the court, he said, careful. It includes concerns about your safety porch step, stove, forgetfulness. It does not include any indication of independent legal advice for you, and several of the risk items appear self-reported. Evan started to protest, and Tara touched his sleeve, a slight shake of the head. She wasn't fully on my side, she was on the side of the person she used to be. It looked like hope disguised as hesitation. Ari turned to me. If you choose to remain in your home, what boundaries do you intend to maintain with family and third parties? I slid him a blue card like I was paying a bill. Email only. No in-home visits without written consent. No representatives acting for me. All documents reviewed independently. He read it like scripture, then tucked it under the corner of his tablet as if it belonged there. The room felt as steady as the thermos. Last question for now, he said, pen poised. He glanced at Evan, then back to me. Who opened escrow when the owner hadn't authorized it in writing? That night, the house felt like a held note. Not tense, exactly more like a string tuned tight enough to sing if I wanted to pluck it. I left the lights low and made tea in Victor's dented thermos because the small weight of it steadied my hands. The blue index cards were fanned on the table like a deck, and for once I knew which ones I needed to play. Here's what I realized, and I'll tell you plainly because I'm tired of performing calm. My misbelief was tidy and polite. I thought if I stayed soft and agreeable, life would do me the courtesy of not pushing. But softness without a spine is just an invitation. So I opened my laptop and wrote the email I'd been avoiding, the kind that makes your stomach flutter because it changes the weather in a room you still have to live in. Subject line, Leah's template, bless her. Follow-up documents presented on today at my address. Then the words, steady as a metronome. For my records, today at time, Evan Cole arrived with names. A representative authorization and a property appraisal were presented without prior written consent. I do not authorize any representation, scheduling, or document submissions on my behalf. All future communication must be in writing, email only. I will review any documents independently and respond in writing. No in-home visits absent written consent. Please confirm receipt. I read it aloud once to the thermos. It sounded like someone I'd trust with my spare key. I BCC'd the fog folder, added Leah, and hit send. That tiny whoosh felt like a flag going up a pole in my chest. Not a victory flag, more like a boundary marker. This is where my lawn ends and your opinion begins. Then I made the phone calls that used to make me feel like an old lady in a sitcom and now felt like competence wearing a cardigan. I called the credit union and set a verbal password that isn't a grandchild's birthday, isn't my mother's maiden name, and isn't anything that lives in a drawer. Trina, the cheerful one, had me repeat it, and each time I did, my voice settled. I asked her to note, no changes by phone without the password, call back to the number on file, and no wires initiated without in-person dual confirmation. She said, Miss Reyes, I wish all my members would do that. And I wrote her name on a card labeled, Bank Good People. Next, I placed a fraud alert with the credit bureaus. I made a written note to pick up a freeze if my stomach asked for one later. I logged into utilities and changed the contact emails to mine alone, then printed the confirmation screens because screens forget things when they want to. I took a pen and, on a blue card, wrote 3 lines bold enough to read from the hall. Document notify enforce. I taped it next to the back door where Victor used to hang his work jacket. There's a silence that follows work like that. Not empty, cleared. I sat in it and let my shoulders drop a notch. Then, because the hardest part wasn't paperwork, I wrote to Tara. Not a speech, a boundary with kindness stapled to it. Honey, I love you. I will not discuss decisions in person or by text. Email only. If you need to drop something by, request by email first. No keys will be shared. If you want to be here, I want you here under the same rules as anyone who loves me. I did not say your husband. I did not say until you wake up. I said what I would do and what I would not, like a weather report for my own house. Then, I did the piece I'd avoided for years because it felt like an admission I might need it. I packed a go folder. Photocopies of my ID, Medicare card, deed, insurance, medication list, and the first 3 blue cards. A cheap flash drive with scans. I slid it all into a Ziploc and tucked it behind the cookbooks under M for maybe. I added a sticky note to my recipe box. If the day gets loud, take this and go to Leah. Writing it down made the plan real enough to stop haunting me. I wish I could tell you I felt brave. I felt like a woman calling her own bluff in the quiet. Before bed, I opened the binder and moved Victor's letter to the very front, so it would be the first thing I saw if I forgot how to be stern. I wrote one more card and taped it dead center on the fridge door. Kindness isn't consent, and silence isn't a signature. Seeing the words in my own hand made them less like a quote and more like a policy. I was closing the laptop when the text came in. An unknown number. Local. The kind of message that chooses its words too carefully. Don't trust Sunfield. Paperwork will look clean, follow the money. No punctuation at the end, which somehow made it worse. I sat there with the phone humming like a thing alive. I didn't answer. I copied the text into my incident log with the number and the time, then took a screenshot. A minute later, a second ping, this time a link. I don't click links from strangers. Leah's voice in my head. Confirm independently. So I did the slow, unfun version. I typed the name Sunfield Ridge LLC into the Public Business Registry. It was a short search with a long echo. Manager listed as Cole Real Estate Group, filing contact and email I recognized from a holiday party invite. Secondary manager, a last name that belonged to Evan's cousin. My chest went cold and hot in alternating waves, like stepping into the ocean wrong. I took screenshots. I printed the page, slid it into a sleeve in the boundary binder, and wrote on a fresh card, Sunfield-related party, conflict. The word conflict steadied me because it belongs to policy, not panic. The house had that late-hour quiet that lets you hear your own blood. I put the phone face down, turned the thermos cap you are done tight, and stood at the sink for a minute, palms on the cool edge. I thought about how easy it would be to text Tara and say something that would break us a second time. I didn't. I put the kettle on low for the morning, because tomorrow I would need tea and a spine and a smile that didn't invite negotiation. Then I wrote one more card and slid it under the binder's clear cover, so I'd see it before any conversation. Ask, who opened escrow? On what authority? He had live as a primed too on. The phone buzzed once more on the counter. A group chat preview, the icon a corporate logo I'd seen on water bottles at an office party. The sender line read Sunfield Ops Managers, and beneath it, the first words of a message I didn't think I was supposed to see. Evan, update on the Reyes situation? I asked Officer Torres to meet me at the credit union because calm looks different when a uniform is in the room. He called it a civil standby, the kind of presence that keeps voices from climbing ladders they can't climb down. I brought my boundary binder and Victor's thermos like talismans. The lobby smelled like pen caps and lemon cleaner. The carpet made that soft hush that says, we keep records here. Evan and Tara were already at the round table by the window. He stood when he saw Torres and did that wide-palmed greeting men do when they want to look harmless. No drama, he said, which is what people say right before they try some. Tara's eyes found my face like a swimmer looks for the shore. I set the thermos down. The lid clicked like punctuation. Here's what we're going to do, I said, mostly so I wouldn't forget. We're going to put all the mouths on one line so the papers talk to each other. I asked Trina from the credit union to help us place a 3-way call. She likes a tidy process, so she smiled and said, You got it, Miss Reyes. We dialed Furco Property Services first, then added a number for Sunfield Ridge LLC that Leah helped me verify the slow way. Furco answered with a baritone that had been to more meetings than I have. Furco, this is Daniel. I gave him identifiers from the statement in my binder and said, "I'm verifying a beneficial interest and covenants on a note tied to Sunfield Ridge, LLC." He didn't gasp or say, "Ma'am." He pulled the file, read the date of the trust, and confirmed the clause Victor tucked there like a lighthouse. Any coercion to force me from my home constitutes default. He read it exactly, no drama in his voice, which made my cells relax in a way no pep talk ever could. Evan tried to turn the steering wheel with a chuckle. "That clause is theoretical," he said. "It's boilerplate. We're all operating in good faith." "Good faith has signatures," I said. "It also has dates." I slid my blue card across the table so he could read it upside down. "Document, notify, enforce." He looked at it like it might stain. When Sunfield picked up, it was a woman with a brisk voice that had the word operations tucked into it. I gave my name and said, "I'm on a recorded line at my credit union with my officer present. I need to know who opened escrow associated with my address, on what authority, and what role Cole Real Estate Group has at Sunfield." You could hear paper moving through her end like a small wind. "Escrow was opened last Thursday," she said finally, and gave a file number. The initiator was listed as Evan Cole, acting representative. The pause after acting representative was the kind, quiet people use when they won't say the rude thing. "On what written authority?" I asked. "Attached authorization is unsigned," she said, more brisk now, like walking faster down a hall. "Our policy requires owner consent. If we don't receive it, we close the file." It's Son-esque. Torres didn't say anything. He's good at being gravity, but his presence made that word owner glow in the air. Tara pressed her lips together. It wasn't a frown. It was a seam. "If there's been any attempt to pressure Miss Reyes," the Furco man added carefully, "we have covenants to address default on the Sunfield note." Evan leaned forward, elbows on the table, salesman sincerity turned up a notch. "Look, we're talking about safety. You've seen the porch step. Cedar Hills is ready now. I'm just keeping momentum so she has options." "Options aren't real if they require a lie," I said quietly. "Kindness isn't consent." Tara started to cry the way careful people do, one tear, then a swallow. "Mom, I don't want you to be alone," she said. I thought this would be easier." "It is easier," I said, "when we follow the rules we set out loud." Sunfield's operations woman cleared her throat. "We'll suspend the file pending written consent from the owner," she said. "Please send us a note stating your preference. If there are related party concerns, we'll flag for review." Related party. The words had a tin taste. "There are," I said, and gave her the registry details Leah and I printed. She took them down without editorial. I asked for an email confirming the suspension. She agreed. Furco's man closed with the kind of sentence that lets everyone leave with their coats. "Miss Reyes, you can call me directly if you need additional verification." He gave his extension. I wrote it on a blue card labeled Furco Direct. We hung up, and the quiet came back like a blanket. Evan stared at the thermos like it owed him money. "You're blowing this up," he said, softer now, aiming at sympathy. "Once these things get flagged, it complicates everything." "Complication is what happens when you skip the simple parts," I said. "Ask, write, wait." Torres stood, polite as a chapel. "I think Miss Reyes has made her position clear," he said. "If there are further concerns, put them in writing." Evan gathered his papers like someone cleaning up a picnic in a windstorm. He tried one last look at Tara, the one that used to make her change her mind. She didn't meet it. She was busy looking at me, which is not victory, exactly, but it's a road. As we left the table, my phone buzzed. Ari Mendoza. Preliminary findings submitted. No basis for guardianship, POA. Concerns appear self-reported. Recommend email only and independent review remain in place. My breath left my chest in a shape that felt like gratitude. At the door, the bell chimed that little friendly ding. Evan peeled off toward the parking lot, already dialing, the way men do when they need a new plan. I held the door for Tara and balanced the thermos against my hip. The autumn air smelled like pencil shavings again, or maybe that was just hope trying on a new name. Leah doesn't do Triumph. She does timestamps. By midweek, she had a neat little stack of screenshots printed on the library's good paper and clipped at the top like a school report. Public registry, she said, tapping the first page. Sunfield Ridge LLC Managing Member, Cole Real Estate Group. Registered contact, an email you and I have both seen on holiday party invites. Secondary manager, Evan's cousin. She didn't look at me while she said it, which is an Oregon kindness. We faced the paper, not the person. We added the registry pages to my boundary binder, and I wrote a new blue card in block letters, related party conflict disclosed. Then Leah slid over another printout, an email thread someone had forwarded to my library account from a burner address named after a tree. The subject line was smug in that corporate way, Risk Narrative Reyes. In it, the client services woman from my kitchen wrote to the appraiser and CC'd Evan, bulleting memory concerns and home hazards as if they were facts gathered by fairies. Not a script placed on my table. 2 lines were highlighted by whoever leaked it. Please emphasize porch slope and document stove safety. Capacity concerns may expedite placement. My throat did that dry click it does when I want to shout, and remember, I don't. We didn't shout. We documented. I added Leah's pages to the binder, labeled the sleeve, Sunfield, agent emails, scripted risks, and opened a fresh note in my incident log. Then I wrote a confirm and correct to the entire cast. On date, I received documents reflecting pre-filled risk narratives circulated between your vendors and my son-in-law. Please be advised I will share with the court visitor, title, and any relevant compliance departments. I do not consent to representation or characterization absent independent assessment. Confirm receipt. It is an appraised, Ari called before my tea cooled. Miss Reyes, thank you, he said, voice steady in that way that feels like a hallway with good light. Please send everything. I'm filing my preliminary findings now. No basis for guardianship or POA. Noted that concerns appear self-reported and that related party influence exists. I'll recommend the court decline any capacity petition and that any financial conduct be reviewed outside my scope. He paused. You taught me labels once, he added, almost shy. Today I'm labeling patterns. That matters. Here is no. After we hung up, I sent the packet to title compliance with a subject line that sounded like a door locking. Request to close unauthorized escrow owner non-consent and related party conflict. 30 minutes later, a reply. Escrow closed. Initiator was Evan Cole. No signed authorization on file. I printed it and slid it into a sleeve that made a sound like a zipper, satisfying but modest. On a blue card I wrote, Report filed. I tucked it under the binder's clear cover so the words would live where my eye lands first. Tara came by at dusk with her shoulders dropped like she'd set down a heavy bag somewhere I couldn't see. She didn't sit. She hovered in the space between rooms, the way cats do when they're deciding whether to trust a couch. I got a message, she said, voice thin at the edges. I think it was meant for Evan, but it came to me because we share a family plan and someone messed up a group list. I haven't listened. I couldn't. Will you listen with me? She put her phone on the table between the thermos and the binder. The file name was nothing VM 1347 M4A, which made it worse. I hit play, and we leaned toward the little speaker like it was a campfire we were hoping would make us brave. His voice, no bravado, no sales sheen, just the flat efficiency men use when they think they're talking to a room full of mirrors. Once the old lady signs the representative authorization, we control the timeline. If the cav pushes back, lean on capacity porch, stove, forgetfulness. Sunfield needs this unit. Don't let her drag. Tara's hand flew to her mouth like she could keep the words from entering. I felt something very old and very simple lift its head in me, the kind of anger that knows the difference between fury and fuel. I paused the recording and the kitchen went so quiet we could hear the thermos cooling. Mom, Tara whispered. I am so sorry. She said it like a person walking into her own house after a fire. I didn't speechify. I did what we've been doing since this began. I reached for a card and wrote, with a pen that didn't shake, audio saved chain of custody noted. I emailed the file to myself, to Ari, and to title compliance, with one sentence that could sit politely in a courtroom. Attached is an audio message suggesting coordination to mischaracterize capacity and open escrow without owner consent. Tara wiped her eyes and finally sat. "What now?" she asked. "Now," I said, sliding the binder toward her so she could see her father's letter through the plastic. "Paper. And then, whatever paper makes possible. It's not today." My phone buzzed before we'd stood up. An email banner from Ari. Received. Adding to report. Scheduling follow-up with counsel. Beneath it, a text from an unknown number that didn't bother with hello. "You've made this ugly. Lawyers will be in touch." "Oh." I set the phone face down and poured tea into 2 cups. "They always threaten noise when the paper starts to talk," I said. "Let it talk." And then Tara's phone lit again, different thread, a name neither of us expected. An operations manager at Sunfield we'd met once over cheese cubes. The preview line was a single sentence that felt like a door opening in a dark hall. "I think you should know who really owns Sunfield's debt. Indy Stander." The email from the Sunfield manager was 3 sentences long and changed the shape of the room I was standing in. "Miss Reyes," it said, "off the record because I have a mother too. Sunfield's senior debt isn't bank held. It's a private note VR family trust. If anyone is pressuring you to vacate, that note is at risk of default. You didn't hear it from me." I printed it and slid it under Victor's promissory note, like a second layer of glass. It didn't feel like a plot twist. It felt like a contingency plan finally doing what it was built to do. Victor hadn't left me a jackpot. He'd left me a firebreak. I called Furco. Daniel's baritone didn't get excited. He just opened the file. I read him the email, and I could hear, through the line, the sound of a pen doing neat work. "We will send a formal notice of potential default to Sunfield," he said, "pending verification of coercion. We'll also request written confirmation that any escrow associated with Miss Reyes's property is closed for lack of owner consent." "It's already closed," I said, "because I like to be the last domino in my own row." "Then this will be a courtesy copy," he said. Sometimes courtesy is the sharpest knife. I didn't answer Evan's texts that night, or the one that said, "You're not being reasonable," as if reason were a chair he could pull out for me. I copied each message into the incident log like a person sweeping glass into a dustpan. I slept without dreaming and woke up to rain that was trying to become sun. The next day moved in courier steps. Title compliance wrote to confirm escrow terminated and no signed authorization on file. The county clerk emailed back. "No quitclaim recorded. Nothing pending under my parcel number." The UCC-1 draft never made it past wishful thinking. A separate message landed from a department I hadn't written to Ethics and Compliance, Cole Real Estate Group, requesting any documentation of misrepresentation. I sent them the risk narrative, the leaked audio, and the registry screenshots with a subject line that wore a suit: Conflict of Interest, Consumer Impact. By late afternoon, Mr. Evan Cole has been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. It's a sentence that looks calm on a screen and sounds like a door quietly locking somewhere you can't see. Ari's report went in that morning. He stopped by my porch after lunch because sometimes reports need faces. He stood under the eave with rain, jewel-toning his shoulders, and said the thing my bones had been waiting to hear: no basis for guardianship or POA. I recommended the court recognize your documented boundaries, email only, written consent for visits, and note the risk of coercion. If anyone files anyway, they'll run headfirst into this. He lifted the binder with both hands like it weighed more than paper. At the hearing, there were no theatrics. A judge with an ordinary voice read the findings into the air. Words like declined, dismissed, unauthorized, owner's consent. The court clerk asked if I wanted a no trespass letter with my conditions spelled out. I said yes, family included, exceptions for emergency only, contact by email. It felt less like a wall and more like a gate with a latch I could reach without standing on my toes. Evan tried to meet my eyes in the hallway, like you try a door you know is locked. He said lawyers in that plural way that wants to scare you with echo. I held up a blue index card instead. Document, notify, enforce. He laughed once, short. Then he left. Tara didn't leave with him. We didn't do a movie scene. We did logistics. She packed a bag and cried exactly long enough to start breathing, then came to my house not as a penitent, but as a person on probation, her word, not mine. We wrote it down because love needs paper too. Email only for decisions. Contribute to groceries and utilities. Counseling booked by Friday. No keys for now. If you want to be here under the same rules as anyone who loves me. She signed with her full name, and I signed with mine, and we tacked the sheet to the inside of the pantry like a truce flag we could visit privately. We made dinner side by side without narrating our pain. She chopped onions, I browned chicken. At one point, she reached for the thermos to move it out of the way and then left her hand on it, just resting, like you might touch a railing at the top of the stairs. Days began to look like themselves again. I met Leah at the library and we turned our cards and emails into a one-page checklist, plain language, big font, no mystique. Title at the top, Boundary and Incident Log. The 10 Essentials. It fit on a single PDF because discipline is a kindness. The branch manager said we could host a small workshop on Saturdays. We called it Paper Over Pressure. The first week, 5 women came. The second week, 11. We brought muffins because sugar is not a bribe, it's a courtesy. A week later, a certified letter arrived addressed to me in full, accent mark and all, Cole Real Estate Group Ethics. We have concluded our internal review, it said. We identified policy violations involving conflict of interest and misrepresentation. Appropriate personnel actions have been taken. We are implementing additional training on elder-client interactions. It didn't say sorry, it said appropriate, which is corporate for we learned because it cost us. I set the letter under a magnet and took the thermos out to the front step. Rain had polished the big flat stone Victor and I set by the maple years ago. I sat there and let the cold come through my jeans because it proved I was still upright. Tara joined me with 2 mugs and a silence I liked. Neighborhood sounds did their normal job, mail truck, a dog convinced of its relevance, a laugh from a porch down the block. Mom, she said after a while, I don't know how to apologize big enough. You don't, I said. You just match your words to your paper, and you keep doing it until both of us believe you. She nodded, and that was enough for a Tuesday. The next day I got a plain envelope from the court. Thank you for your cooperation, Miss Reyes. For your records. There was a copy of Ari's report and a note at the bottom in tidy handwriting. Labels are promises to your future self. I smiled without meaning to. Here is the truth I landed on, and I'm only going to say it once. Kindness isn't consent, and silence isn't a signature. I used to think boundaries would make me lonely. It turns out they make me visible. Paper didn't win because it was clever. It won because it was steady. It outlasted hurry. It made room for people to come back right. Sometimes in the evening, I set the thermos on that rain-dark stone and watch the maple flicker like it's practicing being a small fire. I think about Victor writing clauses like love letters to a future he didn't get to live in. I think about Leah's pencil, quiet and relentless. I think about Tara boiling pasta and keeping receipts. I think about how many kitchens hold women who need an index card before they need a lawyer. If you're listening to this with a knot in your stomach because someone is leaning on you to sign, I'm going to hand you the only thing that kept me from drowning. 3 lines on a scrap of blue. Document. Notify. Enforce. Next time, I'll show you the 7 questions I ask before I sign anything. They fit on one card, too. Here's the truth I hope you carry out of this. Kindness isn't consent and silence isn't a signature. Boundaries aren't a wall. They're a door that opens only when you turn the handle. In real life, power looks ordinary. It's a dented thermos cooling on the counter while you breathe. It's a stack of blue index cards that says, document, notify, enforce. When pressure shows up as hurry, you don't need a speech, you need a process. If this story nudged something tender in you, try these small, lawful steps this week. This is not legal advice. Write your 3 lines and tape them where you'll see them. Email only. No in-home visits without written consent. No representatives acting for me. Start a family incident log. Date, time. Who was present? Exact words. Screenshots. Photos. Next step. Save it to a safe folder. Set a verbal password with your bank, credit union. Require callbacks to the number on file. Decline changes without it. Confirm independently. Call the bank. Title. Company. From a public number you look up yourself, not a link or card they handed you. Ask before you sign. Who benefits if I rush? What happens if I don't sign today? Who opened escrow and under what written authority? Let the motif remind you. When your hands wrap that steady thermos, your voice can be steady too. And if you've been on the other side fooled, pressured, or complicit, there's room at this table for repair. Paper over pressure. Start where you are. If this resonated, drop one sentence you'll say to yourself on a hard day in the comments. Then download the free one-page boundary and incident log in the description and follow the series for 7 questions before you sign. May you sleep tonight on a boundary you chose and wake up knowing you can choose it again tomorrow.